No, yeah, my heart won't want to my chest.
Okay, we are live. Call the meeting back to order. And it's a single item agenda, and that's the capital and operating budget. And we've already gone through it, but we have some highlights he wants to suggest before we get back to the sort of the bottom line. Ready?
Okay, so good morning. Good afternoon, council. So last week I presented to you the initial draft of the 23-24 capital and operating budgets. Since that presentation, there have been a few changes that have been made, so I want to take you through those changes. And then what we're going to be discussing today is how to turn this budget into a balanced budget. So right now it's a surplus, as we discussed last week. And there are some alternative options that you can come to close that surplus to zero, which is something we're required to do. So the changes in here that are different from what you see last week. The Church Memorial Park budget grant was adjusted to $135,000. That's a temporary increase. So the $60,000 increment is funded from general operating reserves. So that was not impact. I'm on page 3 of the one right hand. We received some additional information on the PVSC annual contribution. It's very minor adjustment there. The insurance premiums, we got a better estimate of those. They are actually going up about 17% over prior year. That's significantly higher than the 7.5% estimate. That's an increase of 23,000. Most of that will impact the surplus calculation. However, some of that will relate to reserve funded operating areas, solid waste collection, and the regional EDI initiative, the adjusted net cost. So net cost, which is our gross cost less the revenue we're receiving from the regional partners, it's been increased to $52,493. So that's an increase of over $13,000. There was also one error that was spotted in the budget book on the capital side, the council chamber audio visual upgrades. The presentation that I showed you had the correct number, just the budget book not. That's been corrected. No change, just the status of what the document shows. So the net change is the surplus is now $433,283. That's down $29,491 from what I spent last week. And the net contribution to reserves is now $3,081,507. That's a decrease of $69,162. There will also be impacts to related to the capital grants discussions that we've had. However, those are all zero to the budget as they're reserve. That's all the changes that are here compared to what we saw last time. And so I'm not going to go through everything else in here, although I think internal numbers and all the pages have been updated to reflect those changes. However, the last page is really the purpose for this discussion. The surplus at $433,283, and as I mentioned last week, there are a couple of examples of options to close the gap on the surplus here on the last page, including the impact of 1 cent reduction to the residential and resource rate, a 1 cent reduction to the commercial rate, and what will happen if we increased EV transfer tax allocation by 10%. So now.
So that's really what we have to decide. And just to flag, the page prior to the last page, page 40 was those parking lot items, which we have not included. We have not included that. The majority of them are one-time items, so there is a decision after receiving a report from staff to invest in the moorings program. That's the priority. It would be primarily one-time costs. We haven't identified the number. One technique in your budget is, if you could come up with an notional amount to transfer to reserves from general revenue. So you can decide to transfer 100,000 to reserve for unbudgeted items, and then use that like a contingency. Or you could identify specific numbers. So that's an additional.
We don't know what's going to come. So,
Thank you, James, for bringing up that parking lot page. I forgot to mention there were some changes. So from the discussion that was had last week, I added a few other items to that slide that we were just discussing. The second last slide of the presentation, just to include some of the items that came up in the discussion last week. It doesn't change anything.
some.
I haven't done anything.
So I can't, I think the real, for the MICA moorings, my understanding is from verbal advice, there are about, I think, around $3,000 a mooring to install them. I believe MICA had asked for 4, 6, okay, so that would be, let's say $20,000 for the moorings. In future years, particularly the early years, you're likely to have some small operating costs for inspection and removal. I think maybe even we'll take some out and store them. That would be the next budget year cost. But this year, a notional amount would be $20,000, based on what we know today. The Han property, you have to receive. You are supposed to be receiving an update and presentation from the Preservation Society. So we don't know if it's, what we haven't seen a presentation. It could be ongoing. Council might. So we're not sure. If the proposal is not acceptable to you, it could be something as dramatic as demolition costs. If the proposal is sound and you want to support it, it could be grant costs. We just don't know. We think it's likely to be primarily one.
No, that's our strategy. And you had some amount of money in the budget.
We had put, I'll jump in and then you can correct me. We put 25,000 in the budget. That was related to that direction from council in January or February for the Chester Arts Center. What we flagged the arts and cultural strategy because we know that there would be we know that the Chester Playhouse has indicated an interest in applying for operating funding, and there's likely to be other organizations and groups. We just don't know what.
But weren't we going to develop a strategy?
So it's very intent to learn, for them to come back and say, this is how you should fund arts in your community if it's important. Is that what the purpose of this?
Well, I thought that we were going to do a strategy, but I don't.
So council approved strategy. The work plan indicated that some of that work would be done in-house, but that we would be using consultants for a portion of that. That's what the 25,000 is.
Okay, well then,
And
I want to see that before I decide what I'm doing.
So then that's what the arts culture funding strategy is if something comes out of that in the early stages that council wish to develop a new grant program or something along those lines, then that's what
That's interesting. But I would just make sure we're all working for the same operation. I think in budgeted grants, we have included 25,000 for Chester Arts Center.
Yeah, well, that's a separate.
That's
item.
in the budgeted grants, and that would be funded from general revenue. So there may be more costs related to completion of a strategy. Whether the strategy tells you it would be appropriate to have a funding program for other organizations or not that support a strategy or not, we will learn. But we did flag in the budgeted grants that we know that there's other groups interested. One of them was the Playhouse
I made the connection that might be linked to the arts and culture strategy. So, but we don't know, don't have a number. Is that a 23-24 cost? Is it a 24-25? That's why we flagged. That's one that would likely become a ongoing operating cost if you provide this support, if you were to.
Well, before we make too many more decisions.
Well, we just, someone come over there. I heard some other. Yeah, we should figure out what we're gonna have for a budget. and how we keep to the fund. I'd hate to see us give their. Well, we've done a strategy now. Looks like we're 3 more organizations, 10 each or 15 each versus take them backwards.
I just don't think we should go beyond that one this year, like the strategy. I think we need that strategy. Yeah. Have to make it one exception this year, like the strategy. Strategy.
What's our official consumer date? It's still on the list there.
In terms of,
I think we need to give them 1 year notice.
in terms of the list of three, there's one of them that's not vacant. It's not a vacant. Unless they move the daycare is housed in our building. It's not even being used as a building.
Then we don't know. Chance.
So we need to-
But I think that one way or the other, you've got to give them at least a year's notice that it's taken off.
So in terms of that discussion, I did read that in the minutes, but I did not say that I was, saying.
No.
I didn't articulate that. I'm not, I saw a reason to include them as a line item before. And in terms of the work that they were doing, the programs that they were offering, et cetera, way back in the day, we were put them on that list. That hasn't changed for me, and I don't have my notes from last week in front of me, maybe. Chad, maybe, you had made reference to there would be a reason why we put things on our line items, up there, senior safety, card leg, whatever. In the case of the family resource centers, where they offer a program or service that would be very similar hands-on to what we've done ourselves and might be required to do and would do, if we can have those in place in those communities. And that's why we have this line item.
Yeah, I know, but I think that what we were planning to do is, but we aren't gonna make a decision on whether they're on or off. This year they're getting the money, but somehow we wanna try to figure out a way that we can separate the daycare component
Sure, okay,
from the other community
okay,
things.
that's
that-
great. So keeping them on as a
Yeah.
line item.
Yeah.
Okay,
Reason I suggest. Now, before they get the project. Now we don't. Grants at will, or if we leave one of them on or 2 of them on. Will they now still be restricted because we didn't offer? That's the difference, and that's why.
Yeah, but here's our. Yeah, I'm taking it. I don't know what we're doing.
So that's what we want Chad to find out. What are you doing outside the gate?
Before we had classes. And so every year they come back. On the same group, all the same reason they were at that. Regardless if they were not. We're going back.
those are the two, I should speak for Chester. I'm thinking of the same as 3 years. I don't know what. But at that time, they were, because it wasn't even called, yeah, it was, but through the years, there's a new name now, actually, too. But years ago, they were called something different, and they were even a resource center. So they were offering those programs, whereas now they're not, and I get that, I know,
but it's important to my community to experience it. So I'm glad that we're doing it.
So that's what I think.
We're not
we need.
taking, we're not necessarily taking them off, those that we're taking off, we're giving them the rules.
Yeah, once we decide, yeah,
Once we
I mean,
decide.
I get the leisure fund vacant. But if the organization is doing a whole variety of other community things, then just separate the daycare revenues and expenses from the rest. But we need to check and find that out. Okay, so where are you now?
You were about to ask, Kevin said.
This is where we have the spirited discussion about the tax rate.
Yeah, or what to do with the, yeah, well, in general, what to do with surplus.
And we all have-
Well, of course, we do. We gotta agree on this.
Oh, yeah, sure, I looked at number 10. Okay, the commercial rate dropped to $1.45, 8 cents. That's $90,208, and dropped the residential rate 1.5 cents, which will cost us 27. That'll leave $245,000 left in surplus.
I had a similar. I actually wanted to see a full cent on the residential rate. I'd like to see that come down to the 2017 level, pre-pandemic level, which was 69. And then 3 cents, break down to even 150, and then put the rest of the surplus in reserve. That's kind of where I was thinking.
I think we need to put some into surplus reserves because we got so much on the go. That still leaves us a couple $100,000.
I can live with that. I can live with that. I can live with that. I was looking.
I know, but that's a lot of money.
That's
It is a bit of a shell game. One of the reasons why staff put the transfer tax allocation on there is that your revenue is fairly stable and predictable compared to other areas of government where they have income tax and consumption taxes. But transfer tax has the potential to be one of our most volatile. So the less that you're vulnerable to volatile swings in revenue, that would be our advice. So that suggestion to increase the 50 to 60%, the money would still go to a reserve to help tackle your aggressive infrastructure program, and it would have the additional benefit of making your revenue side a little less volatile than it. So no, till next year, then you could always change that, but
Not just for this
but
year.
I can't speak for next year, but you could make that a one time, or you could make it a permanent, and then look at your budget next year, decide if you can sustain that.
The simplest thing for us to do would just say it's going to happen this year. So I'm just going to ask you a question. So if we go and up that by 10%, can we still afford to drop the commercial rate 8 cents and the residential rate 0.5%?
I'd rather.
Then you got to really drop the.
Provide the commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that should be
Yeah,
about rate experience.
I'll only say this, and I know but I'm not going to get hung up on it. But our residential taxes are kept. We give a low income benefit to the residential tax. Commercial taxes are not. So they're suffering the brunt of that increase. And they most certainly aren't eligible for grants or any of the stuff that we do. So that's the only.
Take it to the town. I'm sure.
They are.
They don't get that. But then, when it goes to the north, these units that have second tax rate, that happens. And so I just did a Google search of that. And again, it's can't compare, right? I get that. But the low, the current tax rebate for the municipality is good, it's great. But it's not better than those other municipal limits that I've done the research on. And they have healthier than half residents. I get that. Gate and gotta look at revenues, gotta research, gotta look at all that, but that's what I'm hearing and kind of having my discussions in the coffee shops, which aren't open anymore, but that kind of a discussion. So I like the 1 cent increase.
I can live with that.
So that gives us, that, what this,
Where does that put us at?
$214,052. Almost. 221,000.
Can we live with that?
31. End up going back.
I can live with that.
Okay.
I can live.
Can you? So it's a 1 cent drop in the residential rate, 3 cent drop in the commercial rate. And the rest goes into our reserve for capital, whatever. Infrastructure development fund, and we leave the tax rate alone. That tax rate.
We're going back to 2017, pre-pandemic.
Somebody want to make that a motion that we recommend that to council?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. All those in favor?